2022 East Bank Stadium Committee meeting, and we've got a quorum of the committee here, plus some other council members. And so the topic for today was always going to be, now we've conducted meetings through July, August, September, October, November, including 11 meetings since October 26, pretty aggressive schedule. And the idea for today was to get together after the 5 public listening sessions and to decide as a group whether there was consensus on whether enough information has been gathered or not enough information has been gathered, and there's more things we need to meet about. And I'm going to make a suggestion about that and then open it up for discussion. My feeling is that I'm confident there are committee members that feel like there will not be adequate information before the vote next week, and there are committee members that feel like there is adequate information to have a vote next week. We probably don't have a consensus. We've committed as a group that this isn't the place, this isn't the committee for debate. This is fact gathering. So subject to hearing more from the committee members and any other council member who wants to join, I think my suggestion is going to be, except for one round of questions that's outstanding from the administration that they're going to respond to by Friday, I think all the information that's ever going to be gathered in advance of next week's meetings has probably been gathered. It's available on the website. Some people are going to think it's enough. Some people are not. And I think that we should plan to have the committee reconvene in January to find out where we're at that point about whether the term sheet passed on the 20th or not, and to see where the administration is at that point about getting us definitive documents. So that's my recap of where we've been as a group over the last several months and the way I'm thinking about what happens next, and happy to hear input from committee members first. Council Member Parker.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks. You may have been the only committee member who was present at every one of those public hearings, so thanks for all your time. I did watch every one of them. I attended the East one, and I watched all the other ones. And, part of me, watched the Hermitage meeting, I think yesterday. It took a little while for it to get up. And I was kind of reviewing it and trying to think through some of the remaining questions that I have, but also some of the perspectives and questions that were shared in those meetings. And this may be in the Q&A somewhere. I know you said that there was some additional information added today, but just, when we talk about the breakdown of the 2.1 in the proposed new facility, there's the 760 and bonds and Sports Authority bonds that are backed by these revenue sources, right? And then in Exhibit B of the Q&A is a spreadsheet that shows, over 34 years, like $3 billion worth of revenue. So I guess my question is, do we have a breakdown of what happens to that $3 billion outside of obviously the 760 plus interest is going to account for a big chunk of that. But I think even with interest, we're looking at a pretty big gulf there.
Yeah, and I'll let Mr. Jameson give more details because he's probably not going to like my answer. The administration has projections on that. They won't share it in advance of next week, period, full stop. They won't. That's, in my experience, different than what has happened with other large transactions. And I'm sure Mr. Jameson would like to say it a little bit differently than that.
Is part of the background to how we're at this particular moment. The preference, again, and I've shared this with a few that have asked, was to avoid the sins of the past where, I'll give you my experience where we had a very large project brought to the council when I was in that seat. And a very large development project, probably the largest in our history. And one of the first items brought to the council was a proposal to purchase the dirt beneath it. And The concern and objection that I and a few others had was, how do you then go on to vote against the project after you've approved the purchase of the dirt? And the acquisition was already negotiated. So it was brought to us late. It was brought to us to make us semi-pregnant, and brought to us in a way that was going to be hard to refute the underlying project afterwards. So thematically, we wanted to avoid that entire process. And part of that meant coming to the council before it's fully baked intentionally, so that we would have your guidance on the roadmap. And that is essentially what the term sheet is. When you do that at midstream, by definition, you don't have the final numbers. And to some extent, disclosing, what is the exact bond rate, what are the exact terms, would do harm to the negotiating team, because we are still very actively in negotiations with the Titans team. But the intent was to get to you at midstream to make sure, as a general path going forward, are these generic terms, knowing that we don't have final numbers, and also not wanting to disclose what would harm us in negotiations. Are we at a good place or not? And that's what's before you on Tuesday by design. I think what Director Flannery, how she described it was, give us generally the sense of whether the ingredients here are appropriate, then we'll bake the cake, and then it comes back to you. All of this comes back to you in March with the final documents and the final numbers.
Okay, so I guess what has happened is I found a way to ask the same question I've been asking for months and got the same answer, which is, no, we're not going to share that. Okay, I mean, these revenues that are projected across 34 years in that spreadsheet, I mean, they grow into well over $100 million annually. I mean, I think it is very important that we know how that money is proposed to be used before we say yay or nay on, it's like algebraic formula, and we have none of the variables. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. I need two of those variables to find the third one. And right now we don't know one. So I don't think that that's sufficient for me to be able to advance this personally. So.
Other committee members? Councilmember Withers?
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm wanting to maybe hear from you as well as other committee members, since you raised that point about if we have another continue to meet into January, and I would imagine that if we do, that the committee would continue to meet until final documents are ultimately voted on. Since probably most of our information gathering is done, and probably, unless we decide otherwise, our kind of public engagements are concluded, at least at this point, unless we wanted to have another round, which we could also discuss. But what do you foresee, you as well as the other committee members foresee as being the purpose of those future committee meetings? Like, what would the agenda be, just generally? And if there, I don't know that the committee ever needs to necessarily take a committee vote on the stadium, since that would really, I think, be best as it voted on by the whole council. But is there an appetite to have deliberation in the committee meetings to sort of suss out some of the concerns and kind of evaluate whatever remaining concerns or points there are? And I just mean that just to say, if we do continue to meet, which I'm fine doing, and I think could be very helpful, what are we going to do with that time?
Yeah, and I'll give you my sense of that, and others are welcome to share. I think part of the reason why we'd have to reconvene in January is really, frankly, just to digest the mammoth amount of work that we've done over the last month and a half. Speaking just for myself, these 2 months have been the most intense pace of council activity I've had, to the point of like losing sleep and having to delay legal work. And I can think of several ways that might go down in the new year. to the question that Councilman Parker and Mr. Jameson were addressing, the projections for revenue show $2.9 billion coming in. The administration won't give us a projection of bond debt, but Excel has a calculator, and I looked at the interest rate for bonds issued in September and played around with the rate. And depending on the rate, my rudimentary Excel math shows that of the 2.9 billion, maybe 1.3 or 1.4 will be needed for servicing the debt. And so there could be $1.5 billion generated from these revenue sources above and beyond the debt service. And we're being told, y'all can wait till next year before you get any idea about how that gets spent. And like, I'm not happy about that, but between now and Monday and Tuesday, it is what it is. They're not going to give us more. The universe of facts for next week is set. Sometime in the next year, we'll be told whether my Excel math is remotely correct, and what happens with the other $1.5 billion, and at what point the hotel occupancy tax might get turned off, et cetera. And we won't be using guesstimated numbers. And I think will be legitimate information to gather and public interest around that, potentially to the point of having public meetings. But then again, I get the clear sense from a not insubstantial number of council members, including a few that have said point blank, it's time to move on. I don't frankly know how interested I am in conducting meetings as a group where everybody's made up their mind regardless of what the numbers are. And I think we'll have a better sense as a group when we get in January about whether we feel like there's work that the committee can do versus just kicking it over to the regular committee structure. And I just don't know the answer. And part of it is I'm overtired and just haven't thought a lot about it. Councilmember Toombs, you had your hand up too.
Thank you, Chair. So I personally attended, I think, 3 of the meetings and watched the other 2. The consensus that I got from the residents who spoke is that folks want to see some tangible benefit to the residents of the city. There's been a lot of talk about the intangible benefits. The Titans have their community benefits platform, but that hasn't really been quantified. So I think it's hard for people to digest exactly the total benefit to the community. And from what I heard, folks brought up schools and infrastructure and things that we need in the city. And I think that we need to look at this deal, even though we're still in the beginning stages, we're just looking at the non-binding term sheet. We need to look at how we can avoid $1.5 billion accumulating in some fund that the residents who've been here don't have access to. It doesn't benefit them in any way. We need to figure out how to create a tangible benefit to the residents in the terms of the agreement, whether that is looking at that rent, that ticket tax, and seeing what we can do with that to try to put some money in a pot that goes to our general fund that can be used for the residents. But I think that, the body needs to figure that out. So I would like to hear more discussion about that.
That's a good point. Thank you. Council members who aren't on the committee, thoughts? Councilmember Cash?
Yeah, I guess my question is kind of similar to Councilmember Withers, but a little different, and maybe I guess my overall question is, and especially since Mr. Jameson said that we are still in negotiations, or the mayor's office is still in negotiations, like substantively and procedurally, how can we improve upon this? And so substantively, I mean, like, what are the things that we have the ability to either, obviously we can express concerns about things, but to change anything like what Councilmember Toombs just mentioned, and procedurally, like, we're a body of 39 that's, it's a little different to negotiate something than it is with, a handful of people that don't have sunshine laws sitting at a table. So I guess, what are the ways that I like, and I would think that, I would hope that any council member, whether they already know that they totally don't want a new stadium or they totally do want a new stadium, would be a part of working towards a deal that works for everybody, even if, they're not for it in its final form, that, unless we know, what a final vote's going to be, we should want to have the best deal to look on. So I guess that's my question. Substantively and procedurally, what can we do to either improve upon it, make changes to it, other than just kind of voicing our concerns? Does that make sense?
It does, and since you asked, I mean, a couple things come to mind. One is whether it's this committee having work sessions in the new year to akin to what we do with the budget to try to A, get consensus among ourselves, and B, convey to the primary negotiating parties that we have consensus. Like, that's one way to do it. What has been done before, I'm not sure how, I'm not sure whether a lot of council members have an appetite for this, but what's been done before is like that resolution could pass next week. Well, it could not pass, and my guess is the team and the administration would not even hit a small speed bump in drafting the final documents. I think whether we pass it is irrelevant to whether they work on the documents, and I think if 25 people abstained, so the vote was 8-7, one way or the other, I think that would demonstrate that we want changes still. I think other than our votes and having work sessions, I think that's the limit of our tools. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you. And I want to thank you again for all the meetings that you've set up. This is so much more information than we usually have. I think it's been a tremendous improvement over previous processes, so I'm grateful for that. It would be, like Councilmember Toombs, we've heard a lot of constituents express concerns about how this benefits them, and I think we owe them good answers to that. And some of that is things in the community benefits platform. Can we have more specificity on when contracts will be in place and that type of thing? And then secondly, in terms of this vote and how it lines up with other votes that we will be making in the future, I'm looking through the Q&A to see if this answer is already in there, but do we have a listing yet of the other agreements, whether they're packaged together or not, that we will have to be voting on? I think it's important for us to be able to say, yes, this is non-binding, and it may not be even a speed bump one way or the other, but at some point, there will be real things that we really have to vote on where if we say no, then things are done. So it's important for us to have been satisfied that we've answered the constituents' needs by that time. So if it would be possible to get a list of what those other votes are that are going to happen, and if they're all in March or if they cascade through January, February, or March. And if I need to write that in a question, I will do it before I leave.
Good. If you could submit it, that would be good for everybody to have online. And I'll invite Mr. Jameson, and I'll share. I've heard from a representative on the team side. I asked the question of, what do you anticipate for the timing of the final documents? And no surprise, I think the team in the mayor's office probably have slightly different views of that. And my impression, 2 weeks old information, is that documents are being drafted, documents will be exchanged soon, that if that back and forth on the final documents goes quickly, maybe we see stuff at the end of January. If it doesn't go quickly, maybe we see those documents in March. And I've heard a couple different renditions of all the documents, but I think it might be a dozen different contracts, might be a half dozen. I don't know. Mr. Jamison, do you have a better sense of that?
These are my notes just from other materials that have been referenced, and so this may be incomplete. This is just what has occurred to me is what has to be an agreement, and whether or not one or two agreements could be put into one bill or not, I can't tell you. You've got the project funding agreement, project development agreement, parking facilities agreement, the site coordination agreement. The council has to decide where the 130 acres is. The capital asset management plan, the lease agreements, and the bond resolutions. That may be incomplete, but that's what I've got from just pulling references to agreements and other documents.
Approve a new ticket tax.
And a new ticket tax.
Councilmember Withers.
Thank you, Chair. And perhaps Mr. Jamison can answer this as well, but my understanding is that the Sports Authority approved the preliminary term sheet, which I believe is the same one that we're considering. At some point, there will be a final term sheet, which I'm assuming the Sports Authority will also approve. Number one, wanted to confirm that, but is there any additional work that is going to go through the Sports Authority process? Or I know we kind of have these, there's the council path and the Sports Authority path, and I'm trying to understand how those two relate.
There is a final term sheet. I should mention at the outset, you may have heard Chair Roten request that the full team be here at Monday's Budget and Finance ready to answer every question. So I will give you $5 if you will repeat that question to the true experts that will be in the room at the time.
And it's news to me that there's going to be a final term sheet. I thought it was going from the thing that's attached to the legislation to final documents. But maybe not. I don't know. Anybody else? Councilmember Johnson has nothing to add.
So I know this committee, and I'm not on the committee, and I appreciate all the work that y'all have done because it has been an enormous amount of time and fact-finding that went into it. I'm just kind of wondering what we're deliberating about right now, because what we have before us is a hotel tax, which is pretty straightforward, and then we've got the term sheet that's a non-binding, and it's pretty elementary, and there's nothing super complicated in there in the way that it's saying that, yes, there's some open-ended things. Well, what are these numbers going to be? And we don't know what a lot of those numbers are going to be because we're not that far in the process. My question is, if we're deliberating on whether or not we're going to pass the term sheet, are there things in the term sheet that we object to? Not just clarifications on, well, how much is the ticket tax going to be, or how much is this, that, and the other, which those are numbers that can be provided later. But when we're just looking at the roadmap for a final term sheet, maybe, or the definitive documents, is there something that is jumping out at us that we object to, that we just don't like it? Because I haven't heard. I think we have a lot of clarifying questions. And like, well, how is this going to work and all that? And to Mr. Jamison's point, I get that we need to get a little further in the process. This is very early in order to get some of that information. And this is just, hey, are we moving forward, right?
Well, I mean, they're going to move forward with the documents no matter what we do with the term sheet. Like, literally, the term sheet's irrelevant, in my personal opinion, to what happens next. I think if the term sheet lost 8-7 with 25 people abstaining, or won 25-5 with 10 people abstaining, I think the associates sitting in high rises late at night drafting documents don't even care. They're off drafting documents. Mike's welcome to tell me I'm wrong about that, but they're gonna bring us final documents whether we approve the term sheet or not. And I do think, like, from my opinion, I think the idea of putting an imprint on the term sheet in its current state is not appropriate, and it's not, and the unknowns, and I'm just answering the question, but like this committee theoretically isn't having the back and forth budget and finances.
Right.
So I'll just leave it. I won't give the reasons. I'll just, like, I think there's substantive things with it, but I don't want us to do it here and then have to do exactly the same comments at budget and finance on Monday.
Okay.
Councilmember Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have much to add. I think my colleagues have basically said it all, but I do have pause when questions are asked and not answered. And the long-term impact, I think in my first round of questions, I spoke about what I call profit sharing, basically because we've seen with projects like this that they can be highly generating revenue, but we don't know what's going to happen, what the impact will be on the community, what the impact will be on Tennessee State, what the impact will be, for the city. If we go back to the convention center, Music City Convention Center, and all of the revenue that it was generating, and they were basically sitting on that money for themselves. And while the city was in some real financial struggles. So I think that it is prudent on our part to get answers to those questions ahead of time. And I think that it's also a good thing for us to have some idea of what the long-range plans and impacts, good, bad, and indifferent, will be and how we have prepared for them.
Thank you, Councilmember. And then Councilmember Lee, I know you just got here. Just to recap, the point of this meeting when we scheduled it a while back was to basically collect our thoughts after all the other meetings we've had in public comment sessions. And the suggestion that I made at the beginning is as much information as is going to be gathered before next Monday and Tuesday has been gathered, and people on the committee probably don't have exactly the same opinion about whether it's enough or not enough, but whatever's going to be gathered by next week has been gathered. And so the suggestion is that we reconvene the committee in mid-January by then we'll know what happens next week, and we'll know more about the timing, about documents if the term sheet's been approved, and we can decide from there exactly what we think makes sense for the committee at that point. That was the suggestion, and you're the only person that hasn't spoken yet, so give you a chance to comment.
I am on. That makes sense. I have gotten quite a bit of information and kind of have in my mind what I'm thinking about the whole project. I am still listening to a lot of the questions that are happening. And so what you just pointed out that we were going to do makes sense to me.
All right, thanks. We have got 5 of the 7 committee members here. We can make it a vote to get together again in January, or you guys can nod. And why don't somebody make a motion that we set a meeting for so we got a motion and a second. any further discussion, and the motion is schedule a meeting in mid-January, then all in favor of the committee members say aye. Any opposed? All right, that's what we'll do. Is there any other, well, I want to mention for council members and for the public, Council Chair Roten of the Budget and Finance Committee has arranged that there will be everybody from the mayor's office related to the deal will appear at Budget and Finance. And I don't know if he meant it, but what he said at the last meeting is we'll stay as long as people have questions. And so that really is going to be the place to debate for or against approving the term sheet. I want to, we're going to convene in January, as we just discussed, but I want to really thank the committee members and the other council members who have all been involved in this. It really has been as intense a committee effort as I've seen in my years in office, other than, say, a budget process. And thank you to all of you for your participation. And we'll see y'all next week, and we'll meet again in the new year. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.